Hey, this is Annie.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff Mom Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. So for this Monday Mini, we wanted to put a date on it, which I actually think we should start doing pretty often because things change pretty quickly.
It's true. Some things change, but not all the things.
You look off into the distance.
Look, there's so many cyclical things that I keep looking at, like new posts or new articles. And I'm like, didn't we talk about this 5 years ago? Why are we still talking about this? So yes, things change, but not the whole thing.
Time is a flat circle. You're you're really embodying Matthew McConaughey right now.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of good and bad that's happening, and I feel like we're just going in the same cycles.
Well, I know I've shared the story before, but my AP world history teacher used to say time is like a slinky, where it's always in circles, but slightly moving ahead with every iteration.
Slinkies also tangle up and just go into a giant ball.
I feel like we're really showcasing our personal outlooks on things.
Perhaps. But what is today's date, Annie? What is it?
It is June 23rd, 2021. So as we're coming to the end of Pride Month, we thought we would look at some anti-LGBTQ plus legislation in the U.S. around the world. So trigger warning, like we're not going to get into anything, I don't want to say too upsetting, but just like if you really don't want to hear this right now, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. And these are definitely things that we want to keep an eye on. And it's something that's been making international headlines recently when Hungary announced earlier in June 2021 that they were prohibiting queer entertainment and content for young people. This law passed 157-1 in Hungary's National Assembly. It was framed as a way to combat pedophilia. Thousands protested in response to the proposed and later passed bill.
So we recently discussed the wave of proposed legislations against transgender people and specifically transgender youths when it comes to things like participating in sports, locker room use, and things such as that. And again, these are things we continue to see, and which is why I'm like, why are we talking about this still?
Right. Yes. And there are currently hundreds of bills that have been filed in the U.S. restricting LGBTQ plus rights across the United States, making this potentially the worst year for LGBTQ plus rights since 2015, when 15 bills were made into law. We're only halfway through the year, and 8 have been enacted into law, and 10 are just one signature away. Most of the 8 that have been made into law have been specifically focused on transgender minors. So Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas have put laws into place preventing trans youths from participating in school sports on teams that match their gender identity. In South Dakota, 2 executive orders prohibit trans girls from being a part of girls' sports teams. And experts say that the state's recently signed religious freedom bill will allow for discrimination against the queer community.
So, Arkansas recently enacted a law that gives doctors the right to refuse treatment based on their morals or religion, and a law banning transition treatment options for minors goes into effect soon. Another bill in North Dakota could allow for student groups that receive any state funding to refuse entry to trans youths based on free speech.
Yeah. Some other laws prevent changing the gender markers on birth certificates until the person seeking to do so has undergone gender-affirming surgery. Others would require a guardian's signature for any proposed content around sexual identity and orientation in the school curriculum. Another in Tennessee proposes to ensure that students have access to, quote, reasonable accommodations if they don't want to share a restroom with trans students. Texas and Tennessee have the most anti-LGBTQ plus legislation on the table this year so far.
So some of these bills have been vetoed, often thanks to the efforts, and when we say efforts, we meant fights. We mean real fights. They're fighting real hard of activists and advocates to fight discrimination and misinformation. And it's worth noting that a recent poll found 2/3 of Americans were against these bills targeting trans people. But this push is obviously very concerning, and not to mention how harmful that these are and who they impact. And it's not just the trans community. It's affecting the trans community pointedly, obviously, but it harms everyone. Just again, like this is not just about one group of people and it's not just about one community. This is hurting the whole. I just feel like that needs to be said. And they're contributing to a wave of anti-trans violence, specifically in a year that has already seen at least 15 murders, and the numbers keep increasing. The attacks keep increasing, and it's very, very alarming and really sad. And I hate that we're still talking about this. I hate that after a small amount of time that we got to celebrate with our trans community and the people in that community, that we're back to square one, it feels like.
Yeah. It's very exhausting and frustrating and just infuriating because to me, and I would imagine to most of our audience, probably all of our audience, it feels not only hateful, but a waste of time of like, why uphold this binary and then prevent people from participating in sports and like sports for children? Like what?
Right. To the point that it becomes harmful when we talk about doing the gender confirming test types of things, biology testing on and checking for genitalia, essentially, on younger kids. I cannot imagine the trauma of being even told. Like, let's talk about the overall fact for any young person, adult being like, I need to check you out. Point blank. What the hell? Are you kidding me? Like, that's in itself a conversation of why. And then a majority of the times that when these bills are even in conversation or even being presented, and the counter is, can you name one area, one school, one city where this has been an issue? And they couldn't. It's not been an issue. They're fear-mongering to discriminate ahead of time. I just can't. And the level of permission that they're giving to the outside beyond the government of eliciting this type of fear-mongering among the community and causing havoc and causing violence and causing deaths because of this type of attitude.
Yeah. Indeed. And there have been, we were focusing mostly on the negative in this episode, but there have been some positives for sure. And we've been touching on some of the people making that possible and fighting for it in women around the world, for instance. And that's just so inspiring. But yeah, these are very concerning, and we need to keep our eye on them and not let these things happen under our watch.
Right. And speaking of good things, definitely having the first openly trans competitor at the Olympics.
Yep.
Laurel Hubbard from New Zealand will be competing as the first trans competitor. So good luck. And we're excited to see you.
Yes. Yeah. And if there are any other examples, people we should highlight, laws we should highlight, please let us know. You can email us at stuffmedia@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram at Stuff I've Never Told You. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I've Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.